seen this. It's a really funny movie. Jackie, you don't like French comedy, unfortunately, but I thought this was hilarious. And it's a short film. It's 85 minutes. It's rated M. Vincent Peltier, played by Jerome Commandeur. Vincent Peltier's life is on the line. It's in this often what I found hilarious comedy, French comedy, Employee of the Month. When travelling through the Ecuadorian jungle, Vincent is captured by a hostile tribe. And it's up to the chief of the tribe, played by Jean-Louis Loca, who does not trust white people to decide his fate. And it looks like Peltier could be burnt alive. The chief wants to hear Peltier's backstory to determine whether he's worthy to cross the land where the tribe roams. And so it is that Peltier recounts the events that led up to that point. So from a very young age, like his dad, Peltier dreamt of securing a public service job. Now, who amongst us has had a public service job? Greg, have you?
Well, depending on whether you call Telstra or teaching public service.
Well, I would have thought Telstra. Telstra used to be owned by the government, didn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know when you were employed by them, but I mean, was it a cushy job or not?
Yeah, it's based in an office.
No, not
paid every fortnight, and that was it. Not too demanding.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the reason. Why would you dream of securing a public service job? Because it's a form of employment that's about as comfortable as you can get. The hours aren't onerous, the pay's decent, the benefits are mouth-watering, and that's why Vincent Peltier lands on his feet at a relatively young age. And his parents are really proud of him. And he's courted by a woman whose dream marriage is that to a public servant. Yes, you guessed it. But after 16 years on the job, the unexpected happens. To save money, the public service minister in France, who's in line for a cabinet post, announces job cuts. And whilst many who fit certain categories can be reassigned in France, Peltier is not one of them. Still, with the help of a crafty union leader called Michel Guignard, played by Christian Clavier, despite having a target on his back, Peltier finds a way around the system. Because he refuses to accept redundancy, which is what they want for him, this higher-ranking public servant, Inspector Isabelle Ballancourt, played by Pascal Arbelot, has him traversing and transferred around the globe, undertaking highly undesirable jobs. So whatever the shite jobs are, they're the ones assigned to this guy who won't take no for an answer. He basically wants to keep on working in the public service. But try as she does to get him to sign on the dotted line to accept his payout, Peltier's spirit will not be broken. And each time he seems to revel in his latest assignment. And each time he revels in his latest assignment, the stakes are upped, until he lands a job in the remote wilderness where, and at the risk of giving a little spoiler, he's charged with protecting French scientists from attack by polar bears. I kid you not. So the only other thing I should mention, while he falls for a scientist, one of the scientists there, the path to eternal bliss is anything but straightforward, as the ministry remains out to get him. Does it not, Peter? It's one of the funniest movies I've seen.
It is quite funny. I must say this is a variation of a few other films that have been made over the last few years with a very similar storyline. I know Italy and Spain have produced similar versions, and it's based on the whole European concept, and to some extent in France, where public servants have a job for life. And so this is a satiric view of how far people will go to keep their job, or to make sure that they don't lose their job because of the sinecure that having a public service job has for life. What has been
like that here, didn't it? I mean,
yes,
I didn't just dream that. If you had a job, you had a job for life.
Yes,
with public,
yes.
I mean, I don't know whether there's any job now like that in Australia. I mean, if you work for yourself, as long as there's work to be had, then I suppose you've got a job for life. But there's no job an employer will give you where you've got security of tenure anymore. I'm surprised that it was like. I don't know what was behind that, other than it's a good feeling if you've got a job that you like and nobody can ever sack you. Does anybody? I mean, Peter, do you know why that was the case? This was only like 20 years ago. Why that was the case in Australia? I'm curious.
Well, I think it's partly to do with the idea of having people in roles that are continuous, so that even when there are changes of government or all sorts of other things may happen, that you have continuity of employment and continuity of tasks that are performed. And so I suppose the idea of having tenure, and I suppose that happened in universities as well, even though that's been watered down as well, is the idea of that continuity, that you have a job, that you know that you can continue without any fear of being sacked or of being let go for whatever reason.
Well, you're a teacher and so is Greg. Wasn't that the case with teaching as well, Greg? Wasn't it that you could? Well, I don't know whether you were ever under that system. That once you're in a system, they couldn't get rid of you.
I was in the era of limited tenure and contracts.
Oh, so okay. And Peter, were you ever in a situation where they couldn't get rid of you as a teacher or not?
Initially, that was the case. I was in government schools and I had tenure. But yes, as Greg quite rightly said, they changed the system so that contracts came in, redundancies and all sorts of things, because of oversupply, supposedly.
But I find it interesting because lately I've been sort of hearing more and more about this. The average length of time people are in jobs is getting shorter and shorter. So
yes.
It's quite the antithesis of what it was like when I was growing up. Anyway, it's an interesting one because here we've got a bloke who just doesn't want to leave. And so to say a little bit more, I mean, it is silly, it is far-fetched, but it's got charm, it's got wit, it's got joie de vivre, don't you think?
Look, it's funny, it's a satire, it has some very amusing set pieces. The North Pole sequences are quite amusing, as well as the ones in Africa. All of it is quite enjoyable, and as always, there is a cameo from Gerard Depardieu.
Yes, there is. What would a French movie be without him?
That's right.
I think you could count the steps, you could count the number of seconds he's on the screen, but still, I mean... But when you think about it, the circumstances dreamt up by the star, Jerome Commandeur, who wrote the piece or co-wrote it with Xavier Magnon and also directs. I mean, I think it's quite something. It's quite priceless. And we've talked about the one-liners. I mean, again, really, really clever. And it's to me, it's evenly funny because a lot of comedies are not. You've got comedic moments, but there's a consistency about it. It's sort of evenly rib-tickling, and I think that's great. And sure, it's easygoing nonsense, and more easygoing nonsense is piled upon that, and yet it doesn't purport to be anything else. It's sort of one of these things that you just let wash over you, isn't it, Peter?
I agree fully. It's nice to have a comedy that is consistent, is sharp, is short, and says some interesting things politically as well.
This, you mentioned off air, this came out at the French Film Festival last year, did it?
Yes, it did.
Ah, okay. Yeah, because I hadn't heard a lot about it and I didn't see it then. I mean, I'd call this brilliant escapist entertainment. I mean, it's noteworthy because of the acting. I thought the acting of Commandeur was just terrific, and his comrades. Mind you, it really is the droll representation of Commandeur that stands out as far as I'm concerned. He's got really great comic mastery, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He does. The whole film is well timed.
Yeah, exactly. So, look, the more I saw, the more I enjoyed what I was seeing. It's bright, it's breezy, and it does. I mean, I laughed aloud, and it certainly put a smile on my face. Did it put a smile on yours as well?
Oh yes, there were some amusing moments. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, I'm going to give it, I'm sure, a higher score than you. It's rated M. It runs for 85 minutes. It's called Employee of the Month. What's your score, Peter?
7 out of 10.
And I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Now, Jackie, have we whetted your appetite to see something like this? Because you don't seem to enjoy the French proclivity as much as I do.
Well, I did see the trailer, Alex, and that was enough.
See, that said it all. So, I mean, whoever you got to. It's humor. Humor is a really difficult thing, though. I'm just wondering: is there anything that everybody finds funny? A general question. And the answer to that is
Monty Python.
well, it's funny. I was thinking Monty Python when I said that. Look, I think Monty Python can be very funny, but it can also be silly, and that's what Monty Python is. But there are some people that I've spoken to who just don't like Monty Python at all because it's too silly. There are who are the guys who do outrageous things? The Jackass people. Some people find that hilarious. Other people find it puerile. Humour is a really difficult thing to get right, and I mean, there's lots of When Harry Met Sally is a really funny movie, a funny romantic movie. I'm just wondering whether is humour better when there's romance involved? General question for all of you.
Bullet Train didn't have any romance in it, that's for sure.
No, okay, that's true. So, but it's more of, do you think it does romance aid humour?